Hey everybody, EK Adams here. Today I'm going to be going over creating a Mighty Protectors superhero using the random method as outlined in the rules of the game. So first up, we have character generation. Talks about point construction, playing yourself, power level, character record sheet, and player. And we will start with player. And under 2.12.1 player, it says write the player's name here for ease of identification. That's pretty basic. I've got an Excel Mighty Protectors character sheet already open, and well, this has a drop down box, so we're going to make a hero, so we'll just put in hero NPC for now. Now if that's your own character you're making, your own superhero, you would put your name down up there. Okay, pretty basic. Next up we have side, 2.1.2.2 side. V&V has always had this basically alignment sort of thing. We're making a superhero, and all superheroes are good, so we select good. Next up, we have birthplace, 2.1.2.3. Here you're supposed to roll a D100 to determine where your character was born. So we'll go over to our online dice roller, courtesy of Wizards, wizardsofthecoast.com, or I guess wizards.com. It's their D&D dice roller they've had for years and years, and it works great. So we will click on the roll D100, a 13. If we look at the chart, 13 is a local. The character is a native of the locale where they're first encountered. Okay, so birthplace, we will just put native for now. That might change later, possibly, and we can always change it. Alright, next up, we scroll down the list. Next up we have species, 2.1.3. It's another chart, D100. Roll on our chart. We get a 95. 95 is monster. Okay, monster. We'll type that in. Okay. And let's see, does it talk about what a monster is? Yes, monster. Monster is a catch-all category for characters whose appearance or abilities render them socially unacceptable. Every monster character receives minus 10 CPs, which means character points, and additional weaknesses. Either minus 10 CPs of the distinctive, unattractive weakness, distributing the extra 10 CPs as they wish among their abilities and attributes, or minus 10 CPs of the prejudice weakness, and then you assign it to a disturbing monstrous ability like chemical body made out of some noxious substance, death touch, emotion control, fear, shape-shifting into a monstrous form, siphon such as blood drain, summoning demons, a vehicle that's a hearse, etc. Monsters are feared and shunned by most people in the Mighty Protectors multiverse, the way that mutants are feared and shunned in some other superhero settings. Okay, that's cool. So, monster. So we've got species monster, and we've got another so we're supposed to pick whether it's distinctive, like are they, do they look like a monster? Are they scary looking, or is it they're not scary looking, there's just a prejudice right, that normal humans, just hate them. So, we have to think about that. We can come back to it, I guess. So, I'll just put monster weakness down here for now. Either distinctive, fear, or prejudice. We'll come back to this later. But that does give us 10 extra points. So that's kind of cool. Alright, next up we have culture. It says, unless otherwise indicated on the previous tables, every character's culture is modern. Okay, well, we didn't roll anything differently, so our character's culture is modern. Alright. Next up, we have age, 2.1.5. So age has no direct effect on game statistics. Normal humans usually won't be found superheroing before their teens or after their 60s, but there are exceptions. And then it says the age of a typical beginner superhero or villain can be determined randomly by rolling 2 die 10 plus 10. And then if that character is supposed to have a few years of experience behind them, add 10 or more to this total. And it gives an example. And it also says you may alternatively roll for a random age that more accurately reflects the modern American population. Roll 2 die 12, adding the two numbers together, multiply the final total by 3, subtracting 1 from the multiplier for each 1 rolled, and adding 1 to the multiplier for each 12 rolled, and then it gives an example. I think we'll just go for the standard 2 die 10 plus 10, and we get a 19. So, okay, so our character is 19 years old. Next up, we have gender, 2.1.6. Gender, like age, has no direct effect on the character's game statistics. And then players are also free to select any gender identity, expression, biological sex, and sexual attraction for their character as they wish, or they can randomly roll it. Since I'm randomly rolling everything, that's what I'll do. So first is gender identity, roll a d100. Okay. I get a 23. That is a woman. So 23 is a woman. So we'll start with woman. Next up, we've got gender expression, roll d100. That's a 50, same as gender identity, so it's a woman whose gender expression is the same as a woman. Next up is biological sex, roll d100, 78. Cisgender, biological sex is aligned with gender identity. Okay. And lastly is sexual attraction, 59, straight. So, woman, cisgender, straight. Okay? Or another way of saying it is straight, cisgender, abbreviated cis, woman. Okay. So that's gender. It looks like weight is next. Well, basic characteristics are next. Okay. Basic characteristics. So it's the usual, V&V stats: strength, endurance, agility, intelligence, and cool, which is new for V&V. Cool replaces charisma in previous editions. So what we want to know is how do we randomly roll these, which is this section, 2.1.7.1. Determining BC scores. BC just is an abbreviation for basic characteristic. Right? So there's a random method, and that's what we're going to be using. And I didn't really go over it, but we'll just assume that this is a standard power level, which is, how many points does your character start with? Standard is 150, so that we'll just assume that. Which is what most campaigns are probably going to be, right? If somebody wants to start a new Mighty Protectors campaign, odds are they will probably start with Standard. Now they might start with low or they might start with high, but usually Standard is the one most likely to be picked. Right, so the way this works is the numbers are already predetermined. You have an 18, a 16, 14, 12, and a 10. What you're rolling for is the order that those numbers are assigned. And then you roll a d10, alright, and then that tells you what number goes to what characteristic. So let's go to our random roller. Let's go ahead and reset everything. Let's go to a d10 and roll 8. So 8, look at the chart, that's intelligence. 18 is our first stat. So we have an 18 intelligence. Okay. Next up, we roll again. It's another 8. If you roll the same number, it covers this. Let's see. It says if a roll indicates a number which has already been assigned to a BC, use the next BC on the table. And then it gives an example. It says if cool is rolled but it's already been assigned, start back up at the top with strength. So, okay, so we've already rolled intelligence, and in fact cool is the next one, and the next number is a 16. Okay, so we're not done rolling. We roll again. We get a 9. 9, cool. Well, we just did cool. So rolling back to the top, that means it's the next number is strength. And on the third one, so we have a 14 strength. Okay, 14 goes on strength, and we keep rolling. 6. A 6 is agility. So our fourth number, which is going to be a 12, is agility. And lastly, we don't really have to roll for our last number because endurance is the only thing left. And we put a 10 there because if you look at the chart, for a standard power level campaign, the fifth and last stat is a 10. So we got our stats randomly created. Next up, let's see, let's keep scrolling. Talks about all the secondary characteristics. If you ever play V&V, there was a slightly more complicated way of determining hit points. But power was always, add 4 of the stats together. In the last version of V&V, it was the first 4 stats, and that was your power. In this version, Mighty Protectors, power is your strength, endurance, agility, and intelligence added up. Now, since I'm using an Excel sheet, all of that is going to be automatically calculated. So we don't have to even do that. Just like all these other things, defenses, move, saving throws, things like that, inventing points, all of that, initiative, healing rate, all that is going to be automatically calculated. But we haven't done weight yet, and that's, I guess, the next random thing we roll. So for weight and mass, 2.1.9 says adult male characters roll 5 die 6, adult female characters roll 5 die 4, and then you multiply that result by 10 to get the weight in pounds. Okay. And then it says for teenage characters, subtract 1 or 2 dice. Our character is a woman. She's 19, which is still technically a teenager, but also an adult. So it could go either way. So we'll roll 5 die 4 and find out, randomly generate her weight. So I get a 15. When you multiply that by 10, you get 150 pounds. Okay. Alright. So now we go on to background. 2.1.10 background. On background, you roll 3 times on the following table. It's this table right here. You roll 3 times, you choose 2 of the results to keep, and you may re-roll duplicates or keep them. And then the results you keep indicate the character's general areas of background knowledge. Okay. So we're back to D100. We roll 3 times. Our first roll is an 83. We look at the chart. That's business and sales for 83. Let's roll again. Get a 20. That is fine art. Interesting. Okay. Roll again. We get a 54. That is government. Okay. Well, I kind of like business, sales, and fine art. We'll write those down. Now, the other thing you can do with this, and it talks about it up here, you can keep those 2 backgrounds or careers, right? So business, you could be, someone who sells fine art. That's just your job. You know how to sell it. You know about art because you sell it all the time. So this woman could be someone who works at an art gallery or a store that sells art and just knows those 2 backgrounds. Or you could combine them into a single career and get a +3, right? So it's it's a little bit of judgment, but I think for now we'll say she probably works at some fine art, gallery or someplace that sells art, and so she knows something about the business side, she knows something about the art side. So we'll just stick with that for now. Okay. Next up, we have motivation. What motivates your superhero? Every superhero has a heroic motivation which explains why they're so eager to fight crime. Roll D100 twice, selecting whichever motivation fits best and writing it down on the character sheet. Okay, so we're back to D100. Let's roll that twice. Let's go ahead and reset the thing, clear everything out. D100, our first roll is a 72. If we look at 72, scrolling down, that is self-defense. The enemy are after you. It's only a matter of time before they strike. Okay, but you refuse to surrender. Okay. Now let's roll again. 96. Justice. You are motivated solely by the belief that wrongdoers must face the full weight of the law. Okay. That sounds kind of cool. That's very Batman-like. So we'll go with justice, and we will come to our character sheet. And this Excel sheet has a lot of this stuff already built in with drop-down lists, and there's justice. Okay. And I guess we should save this character and call it, random character example. Okay. Alright, so that's our motivation. We're not a supervillain, so we don't roll on that chart. Next up, we have wealth at 2.1.12. And it says all characters start with a D4 wealth representing an average annual income of about 40,000. Not bad. Not super great, but not bad. D4 for wealth. Put that on our sheet. Next up, we have luck, 2.1.13. It says all characters start with a 10 or less luck. That's how you read this. A 10 dash 10 means 10 or less on a D20. If you roll 10 or less, it means it works. And that's an average amount of luck. So the average person is 10 or less. Okay. Next up, we have origin type, 2.1.14. The origin type is a general description of the means by which they got their abilities. Here's the chart. Mutated, evolved, science accident. Mutated, of course, will be like any of the X-Men. They're all mutants, right? Evolved could be perhaps an alien from another world. Science accident, Peter Parker, that's a classic example. He gets bit by the radioactive spider, gains his powers. Mystical accident, that might be something like, oh, I don't know. Can't think of anybody offhand. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Science project, that's like Tony Stark with his Iron Man armor. Mystical project, that's probably like, again, nothing really comes to mind. Physical training, that's Batman, right? Batman is physical training. Mystical training, that is Doctor Strange, right? He is taught how to be a sorcerer. So anyway, right, so we need to roll that. So it's a D100, we get a 2. That is mutant or evolved. Alright, so she is a mutant. So let us put that down. Alright, cool. Alright. Now we're getting to the cool stuff. Or the cooler stuff, I should say. Abilities and weaknesses. 2.1.15. Here we need to randomly select 2 offensive abilities, 2 defensive abilities, and 2 miscellaneous abilities by rolling twice on each of the following ability tables. And it goes on to say, some of these abilities appear more than once on different tables. Okay, so we need to roll twice for offensive on the offensive table first. So that's what we'll do. Let's clear the screen again. Alright, D100 twice. Our first D100 roll is an 82. If we look at the thing, that is Sonic abilities. Okay, so Sonic abilities. That is our first randomly rolled offensive ability. Our second one is a 96. That is weakness detection. Okay. Skip a line. Weakness detection. Alright, those are our 2 offensive abilities. Next up, we have defensive abilities. Same thing, 2 D100 rolls. The first one's a 60. That is invisibility. So we will type that on our sheet. Let's roll again. We get a 12. 12 is armor. Okay. Type that on our sheet. Next up, we've got miscellaneous abilities, and it's 2 more D100 rolls. First of which is 100 willpower. Okay, so let's write that down. Willpower. And last roll for miscellaneous is 33. A 33 is heightened initiative. Okay. Heightened initiative. Am I typing this right? I think that's right. Okay. Alright, so there's our 2 offensive Sonic abilities and weakness detection. Our 2 defensive, invisibility and armor. Our 2 miscellaneous, willpower and heightened initiative. Okay. Now it says each character must also select 2 random weaknesses. Roll twice on the table below. Re-roll if the same weakness is rolled more than once. Okay. It's another D100. We get 30 for our first roll. That is personal problem. Okay. So let's go down here below our monster weakness and write personal problem. Alright, and our next roll is 65, which is reduced cool. Reduced cool, there it is, okay. And we'll write that down too. Reduced cool. Okay. Now it says final touches 2.1.16 final touches. says at this point, if you've been rolling randomly, you're finding yourself confronted with a list of traits which at first glance may not seem to make a whole lot of sense together. Now it's time to put together a superheroic or villainous theme from all these disparate pieces. So, you know, come up with a character concept, and it talks about, it says look for a pattern, even the suggestion of a pattern in all the random noise, and it gives an example. And then the rules say pick 4 core abilities from the randomly generated set of 6. These should be abilities that seem to fit together under a single theme. And also keep in mind that the character needs to be effective. Leaving them without any attack abilities or any defenses may make them ineffective. Okay. Alright. So out of all of these abilities, we need to pick a theme. Well, our character is a mutant monster. So really, that's a pretty, that leaves a lot of leeway for almost anything. So really, any of these things would work. It's just, to what degree do we want to include them in the character write-up. So, Sonic abilities. That is like, let's look at Sonic abilities. It's pretty much like Banshee of the X-Men, if you know that character. Let's see, Sonic abilities. There it is. Sonic abilities. The character has the ability to generate sound waves. Choose from among the following abilities. So we have A, Sonic Blast. The character can release a standard sonic kinetic damage attack with a range of strength times 2 inches at a PR cost of 1 per use. Okay, and then here's the chart, and these are the points we would normally put into it. 20 points, which is standard for a standard power level campaign. There's also sound creation, which is B. It says if the character wishes Sonic abilities to include creation of sound effects, I may assign CPs to the illusions ability, specializing in sound. And then there's Sonic Boom, which is part C. Basically, you make a deafening burst of sound, and every target within the ability to perceive audible sounds, can be affected by it. So, So Sonic Blast, that looks like really our character is stronger than a normal human, or at least your average person. So let's put, first off, let's go here. Let's do a Sonic Blast. So Sonic Blast, for 20 points, we get 2d8 of Sonic Blast. Okay? And it has a range of our strength times 2. Okay? So 2d8, and earlier it said it was kinetic damage. It has a strength times 2 range. Our strength right now is 14, so that would be 28 inches, and a PR cost of 1, I believe. Okay, so there's our first superpower. Now, do I want to give this character another ability? Well, sound creation and Sonic Boom both sound kind of cool. Sound creation definitely could be useful, right, to trick somebody. So let's move weakness detection down a line. And let's take B. What was it called? It's sound creation. But it also says for sound creation you need to use illusions specializing in sound. So we'll do that in a second. So sound creation, illusions. Let's see, let's use a comma. Sound creation, illusions. Excuse me. All right, so let's go back to the table of contents and look up illusions. There's illusions. All right. The character can create intangible semblances of whatever they desire with an area effect centered on themselves. This is a voluntary ability. And it gives a chart, the census covered, the power requirement. That's what PR means. And then it says by default, illusions can trick full senses. Okay, we can get into more of this later, I suppose. So this is a more of a minor ability. And remember, this is a starting character, so all of these things can be improved over time with experience. So let's start off and let's make it a fairly low point thing. Let's just put 5 points into it with a 3-inch diameter. And let's just make it a regular, regular hearing. So now this is probably not quite correct. And I can come back and correct this later, but so it's just 1 cent, 1 cent at this point. It's, well, in fact, let's just look it up. So we need to look under heightened senses where it talks about all the various types of senses characters have. So sounds audible, that's normal. So sounds audible is what the illusion really should say. So sounds audible. Alright, and that's 5 points. Alright, cool. And actually, I may have, where were we? We were on final touches. This is what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to pick 4 core abilities from the randomly generated set of 6. So out of sonic abilities, weakness detection, invisibility, armor, willpower, heightened initiative, I was supposed to pick 4 of those and call them core abilities. So we will say sonic abilities is a core ability. I'll put a C, capital C, next to it, right? Let's say invisibility is a core ability. Let's say armor is a core ability. Heightened initiative, doesn't seem too core to me. Weakness detection. That's sort of like Karnak, right? Karnak could find the weakness in anything. That's kind of cool. So let's make that a core ability. Let's not make armor a core ability. Let's make willpower a core ability. So far we've got sonic abilities. Really, the C should go there. So sonic abilities is a core ability. Weakness detection is core ability. Invisibility, core ability. And willpower is a core ability. Okay. That's really how we should have done it at first. So we're a monster, we're a mutant. Those work fine together. And that I think the character can be completely or perfectly capable with a sonic blast and weakness detection, invisibility. I mean, with invisibility, you could sneak right up to someone, find out what find a weakness in them, and etc. Okay. Next up, ability CPs. Each character receives a certain number of CPs in each of their core abilities. Earlier, when I was talking about 20 points, well, this is where that comes from. So earlier I said it was a standard power level campaign, and it says core abilities each receive these number of points. So for standard, it's 20 points. Okay, so let's go back to our sheet. And wherever there's a C, so I guess technically that would be 20, that would be 20, that would be 20, that would be 20. So 20 in sonic abilities, 20 in weakness detection, 20 in invisibility, 20 in willpower. Alright, then the next step is to talk about weaknesses. Oh, and by the way, I had already allocated these points, but those will probably have to be modified. We'll come back to that in a minute. The next step is weaknesses. So it says now examine the character's first randomly rolled weakness. Okay. Weaknesses have negative CP values which reduce the character's overall CP cost, freeing up CP so that the character can spend them elsewhere. Weaknesses are described below. Do the character's weaknesses fit with their emerging theme? If so, a number of CPs for each weakness that seems appropriate. You may assign those character points to one of the character's two non-core abilities, or distribute them among their other core abilities and basic characteristics, or if a weakness doesn't seem to fit, you may simply discard it. And it also says a character may take a maximum of minus 20 character points in weaknesses. And then it also says weaknesses added by certain species, abilities, and modifiers. For example, the monster species, which if you remember, that's what I randomly rolled earlier. Animal, plant abilities, or the weakness modifier don't count toward this limit, though the GM should disallow any character from taking more than 30 character points in weaknesses. Okay, so basically, the whole point of assigning the core attribute to the abilities earlier, this is where the weaknesses come in. So we have 10 points from our monster weakness, which is either distinctive or prejudice, or I suppose could be both, maybe be both. And then I had also randomly rolled personal problem and reduced cool. So let's look up personal problem. Personal problem, a distraction from the character's past, their personal life, or their professional life occasionally interferes. And then it gives examples. So the character could be an agent, a pupil, or an employee. The character has a boss or master or works for some organization that can order them around and which doesn't always share their personal goals. Okay. Dark past. The character has a deep, dark secret which will cause them difficulties if it's revealed. Okay. Dependent. The character has to take care of a defenseless maiden aunt, kid brother, etc. If the dependent is frequently in serious trouble, then this weakness is worth minus 10. Public identity. The character doesn't have a secret identity. As a result, their family and personal life are all a matter of public record. Then there's also unusual age. The character is treated as a social inferior by others because they're perceived as either too old or too young to be an effective hero. Let's go with dependent for now. So let's say she has a kid brother and, gets in trouble occasionally. So that would be worth minus 5 points. So let's say personal problem, dependent, kid brother. So that's worth 5 points. And then if we go back to where we were, right, weaknesses, we're supposed to assign those points to one of our non-core abilities. So let's put 5 points into heightened initiative. If we look at heightened initiative, 5 points. Where's heightened initiative? There is heightened initiative. The character receives a bonus of +1 to their initiative rolls per 2.5 character points in this voluntary ability. PR0 per round. Okay, so that's going to be a +2 to initiative. Okay. Then our other randomly generated weakness was reduced cool. And if we go back to weaknesses and look up reduced cool, there it is. Reduced cool. Reduced cool says the character's cool score is lower than normal. This may be accompanied by a reduction to another related basic characteristic. It says roll a d10 to select a term on the table below. Reroll if the term conflicts with the character's heightened basic characteristic, which it does not. Okay, so we're supposed to roll a d10, and then that'll tell us what sort of reduced cool we've got. So let's roll a d10. It's a 6. Disgusting. Okay, well, that fits in with monster, right? We're supposed to be a monster. We're disgusting. So we're going to lose cool and endurance. And then how much we lose depends on how many negative character points for the weakness. So, we don't want to be massively... do we? Let's see. So for -5, we'd lose 3 cool and 2 endurance. For -10, we lose 6 cool and 4 endurance. Let's look at our sheet so far. Our endurance is already pretty low. This character is not going to have a lot of hit points. So let's see. Let's just put 5 points into it. And 5 points is -3 cool and -2 endurance. And one of the neat things about this Excel sheet is it's got built-in stuff for that already. So we come to cool and we say -3. Alright, so -3 cool and -2 on endurance. And endurance is here. And if you check here, we went from a 16 to a 13 for cool, and from a 10 to an 8. And then you're also supposed to put those points on one of your non-core abilities. And, I'm going to switch this around a little bit. I'm going to say armor is a core ability because our character's not going to have very many hit points. So let's change that. So armor, and then willpower becomes a non-core. You get 5 points on willpower from having reduced cool. Disgusting. In fact, I should put that down first. Reduced cool. Disgusting. Disgusting. -3 cool. -2 endurance. That fits right in with being a monster. We're a monster. We're ugly. Well, that's the other thing. Distinctive or prejudice. Let's just make her ugly and fearsome. So let's look that up first. So back to weaknesses, and we want distinctive. If I can find it. Let's see. Distinctive. Okay, distinctive. So there's notice, the default is that you're just noticed. You're visually distinctive, and it's difficult to disguise. That's worth -5. And there's also repulsive. So we want both. We want unattractive and noticeable. So we will write that down. So distinctive -4 to disguise and -2 to reaction rolls. So an ugly monster, and each of those is worth 5 points. So we'll say -5 for that one and -5 for that one. Okay, so we actually have the 10 points of the monster ability, or the monster weakness, excuse me, to add to either our stats or abilities. So we can make stuff better. We can make the Sonic Blast better. Well, one of the things I had done earlier is I'd already parsed out what the Sonic Blast did, and that was 20 points. And the sound illusion thing was 5 points. So we'll do that. So now we have 5 points. So we can spend the 5 points and make our character stats a little more friendly points. So like our endurance, an 8, a 9 as a break point. So let's make the endurance just a little bit better. Let's bump the strength up to an 18. Now we're at 150. And our hit points went up. And our power went up. That's coupled with the armor and the invisibility and that, the character just got a lot tougher, I think. So, alright. So, if we go back to randomly rolling the character, we were on weaknesses, if I can find it. And I should point out that under ability CP costs, if you had, this character has Sonic abilities, and Sonic abilities is A, B, and C. Each of those letters can be treated as a separate ability for purposes of the ability cap. And the ability cap is simply the maximum number of points for things like characteristics, abilities, and average damage. So at 150 points, that's what you get. You get 40 points on characteristics, 30 for abilities, and 15 for damage. And all of that is automatically calculated on this Excel sheet, which is not calculated because I never put the base in. So there we go. So once I put that in, everything fills out. You got a 40 on stats, 30 on abilities, 15 for average damage. And then if you have gear, these numbers, you know, how hard is it to break, for someone to take it, for someone to disarm it, what sort of characteristic does the gear itself have. And our character might have gear and stuff. That hasn't really been determined. And we can start filling out the sheet a little bit more. We'll have a punch. We do a die 8 + 1. It's blunt kinetic. It does do knockback. And we also have armor. So let's look that up. So 20 points of armor. Is going to be 12 points total armor, and then the default is this thing, 3333. So we can go with 333, or we can change it around a little bit. We want our character to be, you know, pretty bullet resistant. We could do something like this. We could be 6 kinetic, 2 energy, 2 bio, and 2 entropy. That's 20 points, and down here you can see it better. There's kinetic, there's energy, there's bio, entropy, psychic, and other. Alright, so our character got a little tougher, can take a punch, and let's look up weakness detection, see what that does. Weakness detection. The character is able to gain an advantage over opponents by analyzing their weaknesses. This voluntary ability takes an action which the character must spend within a 1-inch range of a subject who they can perceive with a full or analytical sense. Power cost is 0 per use. The character then learns one of the opponent's weaknesses, if any, and also gains a bonus to hit with any attack they make on that opponent thereafter. And then it has a modifier, structural weakness. When this ability is taken, the character may swap points of hit point bonus for points of damage bonus. So that's the classic Karnak thing where he can pretty much destroy anything. So we have 20 points in this, and 20 points for each 2.5 character points, the character gains a +1 bonus to hit. So that would be a +8 to hit. Wow. That's a lot. We could, and right now the character has a punch and a sonic blast, both at 14, and both do kinetic. I don't remember if sonic does knockback or not. I'll have to look that up. The damage, 2d8, that is definitely below the damage cap of 15. So if we wanted to do more damage, we could split weakness detection. We could put some of the points into the bonus to hit and some of the points into the structural weakness thing. There's no cost adjustment. So if we do that, let's say +4 to hit, that's 10, +4 damage, that's 10, or +10. Takes 1 inch of movement, it's PR 0. So really, and then we can use this built-in thing and say we get a bonus of +4, assuming we use the weakness detection. And then we also have invisibility. So really this could be, so if we say punch with weakness detection, don't quite have enough room, that becomes a die 8 +5. And then sonic blast, that also gets a +4, would be 2d8 +4, but only if you use the weakness detection. Okay, so let's look up invisibility. Invisibility. This is the classic invisible woman power, right? Turn invisible to any number of senses. So we have 20 points in it, so that's 2 block senses according to the chart. And then you just pick the senses that you want to not be, and then it has some modifiers. So there's a blur modifier where you're just blurry, kind of hard to pick out. And there's also a camouflage modifier, right? You look like the terrain you're in. And then there's a chameleon modifier. Interesting. And then there's flat out, turn invisible. And invisibility, it says it takes an action to become invisible, and there's a PR cost of 1 per round. Okay. And it takes no time to return to invisibility. So do we want this character to be totally invisible, or a blur, or camouflage, or chameleon? Any of those would be fine for a monster character, or even a non-monster character. It's just, what do you want? It doesn't really matter. For purposes of this, we'll just stick with basic invisibility. We'll say, visible light, which is, you know, how normal people see, and maybe also infrared. So you can't see her either normal light or infrared light. And that is 20 points. And PR is 1 per round. Okay, and lastly, our willpower. We have 5 points in willpower. Willpower, the character has ability to control their own bodily or mental functions through sheer force of will. And then the extent of the ability received may be set by the GM. And here's a few suggestions. So there's fortitude, which costs 15 points, but we don't have 15 points, so I can't be that. There's pain resistance, which costs 10 points, and we don't have that. Then there's self-control, C. That's probably what we want, because for 5 points we get a +3 bonus, and so sure, we'll pick that. So willpower C, it's called self-control. Self-control. +3, PR equals 3. Okay. And as you can see on this sheet, and I'll have a link for this sheet. I'll put it up so you can look at it. The character's basically done. And we haven't come up with a story or legal status or a picture or a true ID or a name, but all of that are, you know, that's those aren't part of the random character creation bit. We've done all the random stuff, and then all the math part is already figured out by this sheet. You know, our physical defense, our mental defense, our power, our hit points, our initiative. Now, initiative actually should say, because we have height, this character has height and initiative +2. So really, that's not quite right. Instead of a die 6, it should be a die 6 +2. So we'll just override the automatic thing and put that in. You know, our ground movement's a 13. We have a leaping distance of 3.2, healing, etc., and then everything else. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it.